Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a little chat about the business of being a critic, which I like to talk about every so often because I really think that today the business of being a critic is at its lowest estate, especially a music critic, that it's ever been. That the profession is thoroughly debased, that it's all going to hell. And one of the reasons is because I don't think the profession has ever made the case for what being a critic is and how it should be done professionally and what we are trying to do. And I just love having this forum where I can speak to you directly and sort of from the heart, but also as a professional to my audience. And so I appreciate your taking the time to listen to me. And this is, I think, it was a really interesting experience I had that I want to share with you. Some of you may be familiar with it too. I mean, nothing I'm talking about is unique, but the way I have to process it sort of is. Just, in the past few days, I reviewed the big Barbirolli box, the big Barbirolli box, 109 CDs. Now, I've been reviewing Barbirolli recordings for my entire career. So that's been, 35 years now as a critic? And some of them I've loved, a lot of them I haven't. A lot of them I thought were pretty mediocre, especially his recordings with the Halle Orchestra, which was a scruffy bunch, at the best of times. It's really true. But this is what I found particularly. I mean, I've always known this, but it really hit home reviewing this set because I decided that I was not going to just talk about the Barbirolli box as, because I knew most of the stuff in it already and just talk about it because I already knew it and I would just repeat what I'd always believed. I was going to start from scratch and listen to the whole thing, which is why it came out a year ago and I'm just getting around to reviewing it because I had to listen to 109 CDs or 107 because one of them was a rehearsal disc, which I listened to, and one of them was a audio biography, so there wasn't musical, but that's okay. I listened to the whole thing. Soup to nuts, all right? Here's the deal. I really trashed a lot of the recordings in this box at one point or another in my career. But listening to them all together in bulk, I was much more favorably disposed toward them than I would have been if I had listened to them individually and made real-time comparisons between those performances and all of the other great recordings out there. Because there is no question in my mind, none whatsoever, that certain things in there, for example, Tchaikovsky 4, 5, and 6, or Dvorak 7, 8, 9, or things like that, the late Sibelius cycle, none of those things hold up against the best of the competition. There are better performances of all of that music, and I stand by that. And I stand by my judgments, evaluating them one disc at a time. But what I realized when I was listening to the whole box is that when you immerse yourself in the work of one person who was a good person, I don't want to be mistaken. Barbirolli was a great conductor. He was a terrific conductor. And he was a very musical conductor and a very passionate conductor. And that conviction comes through all of his performances to one degree or another, even if the playing is less than great, or even if he decides to sort of moon about and slobber all over the music. I mean, there's no doubting his sincerity or the intensity. I mean, he was a good guy, and you feel it. You feel it in the way he made music. And I talked about that in discussing the box. But what really, really struck me is how much more tolerant I was of the less good stuff when you hear it in the company of so much else, some of which is fabulous, and some of which you understand or begin to get a sense for him, his personality, his own view of music and the world and interpretation, and you begin to realize that it was a good view. You like it, and you feel nice about it, and kind of snuggly, and so I didn't want to just repeat the fact that, this is all second rate or this wasn't very good. I mean, I did to a degree, but I was much, much happier with it than I was if I had just received, as a critic, say, Tchaikovsky Symphony No. 5, and I had to compare that to all of the other great Tchaikovsky Symphony No. 5s out there by high-powered orchestras, better orchestras, by conductors who spend their lives working on Tchaikovsky Symphony No. 5. I don't know. You know what I mean. it was a whole different experience. And I don't think I can remember another artist where the difference in perception was so great. I can understand how people who make a fetish of Barbirolli cultists, and they exist, could be so passionately devoted to even his lesser recordings. Because if that's all you're going to listen to, if that's your world, the world of Barbirolli, then you are really going to be enjoying a lot of stuff that's second rate. But it's not second rate in the kind of like insulting way that you think, well, I mean, this other guy is like demonstrably superior. And so this is second rate in a bad way. It's not because he's not trying. It's not because he isn't honest about what he's doing. It's not because he doesn't have wonderful ideas about how the music goes. It just doesn't go as well as the other guys. And it was a very, very interesting and somewhat disturbing experience for me. It really was. And I wanted to share that with you because I just thought, first of all, the phenomenon's interesting. And second of all, it says something about what we do as critics, or what we're supposed to do as critics. It's not like, I care that much about being right in any sort of abstract or objective sense. I know that that's impossible. But one thing that I do try to do as a critic is to accurately describe what I hear, to characterize a performance correctly. So if I say, the woodwinds are sour here or the strings aren't together there, you'll hear that too. You'll know that that's true. That was a fact. Or the andante is more an adagio, or the allegro is too slow, or this or that. These are things that you can confirm and verify for yourself. I try to be very accurate, but what we cannot be accurate about, of course, is the value judgment that we finally arrive at on the basis of the observable musical facts. There are many ways to interpret those facts. And the point that I'm simply trying to stress is what determines the way we interpret those facts is the circumstances in which we listen. Are we listening comparatively? But comparing one work to all the other recordings of that work? Or are we listening to it within the context of 109 CDs of music by the same guy with mostly the same orchestra over a long period of time, and a guy whose work is really very enjoyable for the most part? It really is. It just is. Whose personality was very giving and welcoming and easy to take. It goes down easily. And so I just can't think of another experience I've had with any other artist where the disparity between how I might have reviewed one of those performances and how I feel about it in the context of the box is so different. Recognizing the same facts. It's not that I heard it any differently. It's not that the things that I say in it were wrong or I changed my mind about them. It's just that the conclusions that I drew on listening to that box were a heck of a lot friendlier than the conclusions I would have drawn taking these performances one at a time. And I mean, that may be very obvious. This may just all be a truism in something silly and pointless, but it really struck me. And I wanted to share that with you because I think it's as a function of just honesty, I think. Basic honesty and professionalism as a critic. And also because I think it's something to keep in mind when we all listen. What are the surrounding circumstances? How are we listening? Are we listening critically and comparatively? Or are we just having a good time with a guy who we really like? Both of those are equally legitimate reasons to listen. And one of the things that I can't stress enough is that there is no illegitimate reason to listen. The important thing, of course, is that we all listen, that we keep on listening. So I thank you for joining me and listening to me just sort of blab about this and pontificate. Because, like I said, it was a genuinely wonderful musical experience for me to feel this dichotomy so strongly. Really, really remarkable. And I'm grateful to Barbirolli for being the artist who produced that effect. while I was considering his work. It's one of the wonderful things about this job. So again, keep on listening, and thank you so much for joining me. Take care, my friends. Bye-bye.